Hey there, Chadi Bazzi here, and welcome to another episode of the Top Listing Agent Show. Today we have a rather unique guest, a rather unique conversation, one that we've never really had on the Top Listing Agent Show. And, we always talk about how can you have a better mindset? How can you get more leads and how you can sell more homes and, build a good business. But we really never talked about the importance of real estate investing and how to do it the right way. So, we did our research and we said, who would be the perfect person to bring on the show to help you do two things? One, become a real estate investor. And number two, possibly work with more real estate investors. So we found Mr. Charles Carillo. Welcome to the Top Listing Agent Show, my brother.
Thank you so much for having me on. So excited.
Awesome, man. So Charles, obviously a lot of people probably not familiar with your name, have no idea who you is or who you are. Who you is or who you are depends on what part of the country you're from. So why don't you tell people who you are and how amazing you are?
Thank you so much for that intro. So I'm originally from Connecticut. I grew up in a real estate investing family. My dad, never an agent, but my dad was involved in all other portions of real estate investing, from development, but mainly he owned about 100 multifamily units, and then he owns some mixed-use properties as well that he self-managed with a couple different people on his team. So it was a great learning experience when I was growing up. And never really learned much about being an agent, but learned a lot about being an investor and everything that went with it. And I really didn't like it because my dad was invested into properties that we would consider D-class properties mainly. And he had some nicer properties. And as I got older and he got older, he invested into better properties. He kind of learned that was the best way and least amount of hassle. And when I graduated college, I bought my first 3-unit, which I still own today. And that was maybe 15 years ago. And then I bought another 3-unit, then a commercial property. And then now what we're doing is I'm down in Florida since 2012. We've been really focusing on larger commercial properties. When I say commercial, I mean commercial multifamily mainly, so 5+ units. But our last property we closed here in Florida was in Tampa, which was 90 units, and we did that at the end of 2020. So that's kind of what we're focusing on now is commercial assets, but with a real focus on multifamily.
Love it. Love it. Wow. So you bought your first 3 units 15 years ago. Obviously, you grew up watching it happen and your dad making it happen and all that stuff. So that would have been the obvious transition for you. I'm just curious. You bought that 15 years ago. How much more is it worth now than it was 15 years ago?
Bought it at the top of the market, so that probably isn't the best. But I mean, it's something it's probably like I would say 20. I mean, it's in Central Connecticut. That's where my small little portfolio I have up there is, and it's probably like 25% more, something like that, even with what's going on. And a lot of that's because of inflation. Let's be honest. Yeah. But I bought again at the end of 2008, and that was a good deal. And then I bought at the end of 2009, and that was a home run, if not grand slam. I think I paid like 28 cents on the dollar from the bank on that one. And then I'll just say, I know everything's crazy now where we are in 2021, but that property was a small mixed use. So there was commercial. And it was still on MLS. So you guys listening, you have access to finding this. This thing was sitting on the market for over 120 days, which is unheard of. It would never last a day today on the market. So it's amazing that, I tell people people I was working with in 2006 were completely out of real estate by the end of 2008. Most people, the brokers real estate brokers, real estate agents I was working with, the mortgage brokers completely wiped out people. And when I was working with people in 2009 that were still in the business that had weathered the storm, they had, I look back at them now and I keep an eye on them. Not that I buy properties from them, but just, they're in my influence. And these guys are top in their business as real estate agents because they actually had a real business going. It wasn't kind of just, it's good riding the wave, right? But they actually had a business and they actually had real buyers and they had a network and everything like that. So that was very interesting too, that 80% of people, and not that they were like, oh, I'm not really dealing with real estate anymore. It's like, no. I'm completely out. I'm like into whatever, some other field 100%. And I was like, oh, wow. I mean, that's crazy. You know what I mean? Like that you just change your complete trajectory of your, but that's kind of how it works in real estate. You know what I mean? You have so many agents right now that are out there. And I think that changes so much the whole real estate when you have, because it's people really focus on it being transactional, which I always ask real estate agents that I would work with, why aren't you, or do you buy real estate or do you invest in it? And most of the time it's no. And you kind of leave it there. I mean, I'm trying to buy this property here, talking to them about, so it's like, but it's interesting how most people do that.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I have an idea of why that is, and I'm just curious to get your thoughts on, why is it that, most agents, like, even though they're advocates of other people investing in real estate, don't invest in real estate themselves?
I don't know. It's something I'm a real estate agent myself. So I've been a real estate agent for about a year and a half now, and I only do referrals. I'm not even a realtor. So I just do referrals out to other people that are, if someone reaches out to me, hey, Charles, someone in this area, Florida or whatever, so I'll do a referral to them. But it's something that when you do the courses and you do your post-licensing and your pre-licensing and everything, nothing talks about, there's a little bit about cap rates. There's a little bit about investing, but that's so you don't kind of get laughed out if you're talking to someone, right? I mean, it's really, it's a lot about laws and ethics, which is very important, but there's not, it doesn't shine the light on, hey, this is a transactional business, right? But you're working with these assets. And I mean, any agent, no matter how big or small they are, they can look back at properties they sold a few years ago and be like, oh my God, that thing has gone up in value, like compared to when we bought it, when this guy saw it and when he had the vision for doing it. I think it's just like they're focused so much on, focusing on, working 60 hours a week to do transactional deals and to close deals and make a really good income, right? A solid 6-figure income. But there's not anything in any of those booklets about investing. Like literally there was nothing in the courses about maybe you should look into, every, I don't know, 25% of what you make put into something or whatever the ratio is. There's nothing like that. And it's completely, hey, go out and buy more, find buyers, find listings, find buyers, find listings, be ethical and all this stuff. And it's like, there's nothing about, hey, maybe you should get your hands into some of this as well. But. Right.
So Charles, I'd like to take this conversation in two different directions today. One direction would be, why should I invest in real estate? Okay. Where should I invest in real estate? How do I invest in real estate? And then the second part of it would be like, how can I find, as a real estate agent that might not want to invest in real estate, how do I find more investors to work with, et cetera? So let's begin with the first one. Why is it important to invest in real estate?
It's important to invest in real estate because it's also important. It's always important to have, what happens if we go through, not that we are, or who knows what's going to happen, go through another 2007, 2008, when agents I was working with, which I considered good agents, completely were gone. I saw some of my agents working at Lowe's. Nothing's wrong with working with Lowe's, but it's a completely different income bracket from someone that's making $160,000 a year to now working something like that. So it's like you need to have some sort of residual income coming in that you can now live off of, and you can, as you have, everybody has the good months and you have the months where nothing comes in, right? And this kind of will connect those two and will also allow you to have something that, you don't want to be showing houses at 5 p.m. on Saturday for the rest of your life. You know what I mean?
No, so especially for the parents and married people. No, they want to be with their families.
Yeah, exactly. So it allows you to put your money somewhere where you can get some cash flow, where you can get some money coming in that way, and it's a different income stream. So that's number one, why I would say why you should be investing in real estate.
How do I begin? Like, okay, you got my attention. It's like, I would say one of the main reasons that most people don't invest in real estate is they don't know where to begin. They don't know how to do it. They're afraid of, buying a property, multi-unit or single family residence, and then not being able to pay the mortgage on it, et cetera, or, rent it out and whatever. Like, where do I begin? How do I begin?
I would, number one, focus down on what kind of markets you're looking at. So like, it's very easy for an agent because you have target markets. You have your county or counties. You have the neighborhoods you like within them. You're in these neighborhoods every week, maybe even every day. And, start looking around and you'll see these different areas. And that's number one, is pinpointing where you are. And then kind of have your kind of risk meter of what you think that, how risky you want to go. I mean, you have some people that start with a single family. I think with the best way is starting with 1 to 4 units, which we can still consider in the residential. So you can find duplex or triplex or quad, and something that if you don't own your own property, that's the best way to house hack it, which is how I started. And you get the FHA, and you're doing the same thing, but you're just doing it that way. Most people say, I'll tell you, some people they'll go, well, I'll house hack a single family. Well, that's great when you're younger, but then in 2 years, when your friends that are living in there start growing up, let's say, and they're not living there anymore, now have like some weird roommate that you don't know or anything like that, which could be fine for some people, not for me. So the thing was, like, with separate floors or different units, you can now rent it to anyone that fits the bill of what you're doing. The other thing is, when you're doing all this, obviously we're real estate agents licensed, you're held to a different standard, but it's not crazy. I know a lot of real estate investors avoid becoming a real estate agent because of the other standard, but the standard's just really what you would do or what you should be doing normally in life. You know what I mean? So I don't see it as a huge hindrance. And then find out kind of if you can, that kind of financing, you can go through like an FHA or something like that, and you can start on a small level. And if it's in your backyard, it's going to be very easy to manage. And I think the main thing when you're doing all this is buy something initially that's really turnkey as much as possible. Don't buy something that's a huge fixer-upper. It's going to drive you crazy, and it's going to be more work than you ever thought. You thought it's $5,000 a unit to fix, and you find out later it's 8 or 10. There's stuff in there you didn't know. So buy something that's very turnkey, possibly with tenants already in it, as your first one. You can get deeper into other ones as you start going. And then the main thing you're going to need on your team is really a really good handyman, because that's something you're not going to be wanting to do. And once you have the handyman is really, really key with multifamily. If you've got the good handyman that will work with you and not like, hey, you got to bring me a day's worth of work. You can bring me an afternoon worth of work or something like this every couple months to fix stuff. That's a huge thing to have on your team as well.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're an advocate of multifamily versus just a single family residence.
Yeah, it's more income streams coming in. And single family, there's tons of people that make money with it, and you can too. But single family, but there's a little different of a mindset when you're going between this. If you're buying something that's owner occupied, right? And someone might be like all these wholesalers are out there, and they're searching for these distressed homeowners, right? They're behind on their taxes. They have something that came up. They got divorced. Their utilities got paid off. Turned off, their taxes haven't been paid. That's a very distressed buyer that everyone's looking for in the single family, because those are easy houses to sell, rehab, and sell, right? You can get those done very quickly, especially in this market. The thing though with that is that it's much different when you're going into multifamily, whether it's a 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 unit building, where you're not really as distressed of a person purchasing it in most cases. So you might have someone you're reaching out, hey, if you ever want to sell this, this is something I might be interested in buying. I am a real estate agent, just to let you know. I don't want to list it, blah, blah, blah. That whole disclaimer we have to put in there. But the thing though is that you can then, they're not going to be something they're much of a different financial mindset and situation and savviness, right? Compared to the person that hasn't paid taxes, right? Because they had 1 month of, they had their one paycheck away from losing the house or something. So that's something too. It takes much longer when you're buying these properties if you're going direct to owner, right? Which is really one of the best ways of doing it, and saying, hey, if you ever want, I mean, we're looking at right now in talks to buy 122 units of self-storage in South Carolina. My partner's been talking to the owner for 4 years. I mean, so it's like, but the guy has everything paid off. He lives in a $2 million house, all paid off, like a really old school investment. No debt everywhere, right? The thing is that guy he doesn't care about, he's done with it, right? But he doesn't need to sell it to pay his bills next month, his credit card bill, So that's a completely different mindset that you have to be aware of. And I think that's a big step for people that are dealing with it. Not right now, we're in a really crazy mindset where people can, even if you're going in foreclosure, you can sell your house for more because it's gone up in value and all this kind of stuff. But normally it's not like that. And you have somebody that has distress and they're like really, but I mean, with multifamily, you've got more streams of income coming in. If someone leaves, someone's not paying rent, you have additional people paying rent. I know when I was doing my property, even when I bought at the height of the market, my first one, I think 2 units paid my mortgage fully, with taxes, insurance, the whole thing, and PMI and all that kind of stuff. And then I had one, and then I would just throw like, a couple $100 or a few $100 into a savings or reserve account for when the problem happens, that's going to happen, right? When that hot water heater needs to be done. But you're paying equity, right? You've got equity coming in, so it's kind of moving money to a savings account from your checking account. So, but you can write off that, and it's something easily when you're done. You want to go to a single family house for yourself and your family. Easy. You just rent out your unit and you're done. You don't have to list anything. You don't have to sell anything. No commissions.
As I'm listening to you speak right now, multi-family makes so much sense. I was watching a video online the other day, and it was like one of those like TikTok videos kind of thing. And there was a real estate agent that was, parked like 2 luxury cars in front of like a 4-unit. Okay. And she's like, those 2 units pay the mortgage. This unit pays for this car, and this unit pays for that car, which looks very attractive. But is that like a real live, like real scenario? Like, is that like really? Look, I know it's true, but in your opinion, it's like, how often can someone hit the jackpot and find such a deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's right now, it's really in the area that you're working as you're doing your regular farming of people you're trying to get listings from. Just add in multifamily people to it, and add in people and be like, listen, I'm interested in buying this. I'm an investor as well. I'm a licensed real estate agent. I'm an investor. I'm interested in buying this from you. If you're ever interested in selling it, not listing it, no commissions, blah, blah, blah. The thing though is that when you're buying these smaller properties, the less doors you have, less units you have in the property, the more volatile it is, right? So you can have a single family house and it's like, oh, great. You'll heard this before. Mortgage, $1,500. I'm getting $1,800. I make $3,600 a year. Well, until the HVAC goes out, right? And then you're now back 2 years or whatever it might be, right? And when you have the multifamily and, 4 units, okay, it's a little bit more consistent, right? I can have 3 units paying me as this guy is in and out, or I'm renting this, I'm painting it, and I'm not going to make any money this month, but this. So it does work. But when you start building your portfolio, you now get 20 or 25 units. That's very consistent, right? Because now you might have 90% people on average are paying on time for you. And you might have 2 or 3% that aren't paying at all. And you might have 5 that pay you late or whatever it is. So it's something that now that's a very consistent income. But I think, so when you start getting it coming in, don't spend it as it's coming back in on these smaller properties. Hold on to them for reserves, and keep a little savings account or bigger savings account for this property's reserve fund, and then also for your future investments, and put a portion of, once you get that nice commission that comes in on the big house you're selling, move a little bit over there.
I love it. Okay, so I'm thinking, someone never done this before. Okay, we know why they should do it, and I'm ready to do it. Like, we got people in the mindset of like, I'm ready to do it. Where do I begin? Do I begin with like a 4-unit, a 5-unit, 6-unit? The thought of me owning a 25-unit right now is pretty much more like too elite for me. Like, where should one begin?
Yeah, well, 25, when I'm just using that as an example, that could just be, as you go and get 8 different 3-families over the next 5 years or whatever. But when you're,
I get it. No, I misunderstood. I thought an apartment building of 25, units and everything like that. So you're talking about like, as you build your portfolio, maybe you have like, 5 4-units or 4 5 units or whatever. I get it.
Yeah, I had a mentor years back, and he goes, you just need more customers or more, it's like same thing. Your insurance agency, you want to have as many clients as possible. When you're getting into multifamily or any type of thing, you want to have more units, more doors, more to keep it more consistent. And that's going to make your business less volatile. But I would say, number one, if the easiest way of getting in is if you don't own a place already, use your FHA and get into a 3, preferably a 4-unit property in your area, someplace that you want to live for a few years. And then with the end result of, hey, I'm going to rent this out, my unit, after I move out of here into something different. And I would say that's number one. When you start, if you already own, and depending on how FHA and all that stuff works, I'm not a professional and kind of knowing everything about that, but you speak to a mortgage broker, maybe there's a different way if you can get another FHA if you're planning on moving into it and rent out what you currently live in. But if you have something that's going to be a completely investment, for 1 to 4 unit, typically it's a 20% down payment, which is kind of a chunk of money. And when you're getting 5+, local banks and credit unions who you should be using for those loans, those are going to be like a 25% down payment. So it's going to be a chunk of cash when you start getting up into something that's completely investment, 100% investment property, whether it's 1 or like 2 to 4 units or 5+ units where you're talking 25% plus. Now, what you can do, and this is why I think one of the best ways, not the fastest ways of getting in, is if you're talking to owners directly, which you're already doing. You're just now adding a new unit range into what you're looking for, not just a list, but something for yourself. If you have older owners out there, number one with a lot of people, I mean, money isn't always the number one thing why someone's selling, right? There could be something else. Maybe someone wants the cash flow. My dad's selling a small complex right now, and he just wants cash flow off it. So he's going to sell or finance it with 10% down. So the thing is that on your side, when you're talking to people, see if they'll take 5, 10, 15% down payment and hold some of the paper, right? Hold the note for 5, 10 years. And at that point down the road, you can refinance it. And if you find a better deal, or if you really raise the value of the property, you can refinance it sooner and get them out of it. But that's number one, how we do. And that's kind of a conversation you have after, you get them. It's after you build a rapport, like anything, you know what I mean? That's when you can go back to them and say, hey, have you ever been interested in holding paper? Because people I brought that up to, and then you're not paying them principal usually. It's only interest paid monthly on the first. And so it's very simple to calculate exactly what's going to be. And then what you do is that the real goal is to refinance it a few years down the road. And obviously you're writing this mortgage. So unlike with commercial mortgages, you're going to say there's no prepayment penalty, and you're going to avoid a lot of junk fees that your lenders, banks, and credit unions are going to put in there, which will save you a few percent over the whole life of the loan, right? Between buying points and paying points and prepayment and all this stuff that they stick in there for you to get this loan. So it's another thing that you're getting a savings on that. And I think that's a big plus too. So I think the best way of doing it when you're going into it is try to go direct owner. It's not going to be something like you send out the first letter or you do the first phone call and they're going to call you, hey, I was planning on selling this and I've never spoken to anyone before. But it's going to be something that, hey, when I'm ready, and that could be like, for my partner, it was 4 years for him to get this guy that's like coming to the LOI now for us to negotiate. And he's going to hold paper on it. I think 20% down, we're going to do it and hold paper on it with nothing else. So it's, you can structure deals, just find out what their pain point is, what they want. And then you can work it out from there.
Got it. And Charles, in certain marketplaces, a 20% or 25% down payment is a huge chunk of money. Do I have to, I know somebody's asking the question, do I have to buy in my marketplace, or can I buy in a different state where, 25% down payment is only $25,000? For example, I'm originally from, Dearborn, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. I can buy an apartment building for like $150,000,
Right. Yeah. It just depends on the team that you have put together. So if you have a team on the ground in that market that you can trust, that's going to handle all the different pieces of it. Because if, for instance, for me, for my properties that are in Connecticut that I own 100% that we do, that's something where I have a third party manager there and I've worked with them for 10 plus years. And that's something where I know exactly how they work. I know when they reach out to me, we have a really good system, flow of how everything goes. When there's a unit that's coming up that's vacant, I get a little message. I have one of my VAs advertise it. I know when it's been rented, and I know how long it's been then during the turn, right? From make ready is what we call it, from the time someone moves out to the time it gets painted and cleaned and back on the market. And you want to keep that as short as possible. But so if you have that team in place that's able to do that, because you don't want to be states away and you're in the middle of a showing and they're calling you because there's something wrong with the toilet or something, right? Yeah. Which is what everybody hears, right? The toilet at 2 a.m. kind of question. But it's a true thing. It's happened, before to me, you know what I mean? But it's not, once you have your management in place, the best and easiest way of getting into it, because there's going to be a lot of management fees and they're going to be very expensive on smaller properties. I mean, you're probably going to be paying 10%.
Yeah, I sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
I live in California, and at one time I owned property in Arizona, and anytime something went wrong, if you really don't have a good team member to just jump in and take care of what needs to get taken care of, it was just like a nightmare for them, a nightmare for me, a nightmare for everybody. So what you're saying is, look, you can do real estate anywhere across the country as long as you have the right partners, the right team in place to support the outcome that you are trying to produce.
Yeah, for sure. And the states that kind of how we focus on is we look for landlord friendly states. And landlord friendly states is really the Southeast, the Mid-South, the Midwest. So if you took you drew a line down the middle of the country, like all the way to Texas, and you turned right and went out that way, like a big L, that's where really the landlord friendly states are in the country. And that's really what you're going to be focusing on, places to really focus. If you're leaving your home market and you're going somewhere, make sure it's in a landlord friendly state. It'll make your life a lot easier. And that's coming from a 2-decade investor in a blue state, very difficult to deal with evictions in Connecticut.
Got it. Okay. So we covered. Okay. So obviously you got to have the right mindset. You got to want to do it. You got to have a starting point. We talked about how to go out there and kind of like find properties you recommend if somebody is not listed on the MLS, etc. Find those people yourself. What else? What's the next step?
It's really putting together the team. And if it's in your home market, it's something that you probably already have contact with people because you're giving names to people. Hey, this is a great electrician, or this is a great lender, or something like this. Well, you have to start finding them that are going to work for you. And the thing too is that, like I said before, the handyman is so important. It's important also that you're not paying what I call yellow page pricing, right? For when something goes wrong with the AC or the HVAC somewhere, right? And you're calling someone that's actually going to give you some sort of a deal for you coming back to them, for you maybe referring them to business. I mean, this is a very relationship business, just like real estate is in a whole. And so make sure you're putting together your team, and you're finding if you're saying, hey, I want to start with a 10-unit building. Okay, great. You're going to need local banks and credit unions in that area, right? Start building relationships with them. Start figuring out what kind of programs they have available, what kind of down payments they want to see. I mean, these are going to be the people for these smaller properties, smaller commercial properties that drive by it every day, right? The investment committee that they have, that's 4 people or 3 people, and they're the ones that drive by it on their way to the office every day, and they go, oh, that's a really nice building in this area, and they're the ones that are going to lend on it, right? You're not going to find, your large banks are not going to be interested in financing your $500,000 small mixed use or 10-unit apartment building or something like this. So that's a big thing is, start building out your team that's going to handle when you actually get that signed letter of intent from, the seller back. I mean, what are you going to do now? Right. Yeah. And if you're going to if you're going to manage it yourself, and if not, have a management firm. And the best way of getting all this stuff is by referrals. So when you're out networking, find other investors, preferably local, preferably investing in the property sizes that you want to invest in, and finding out, hey, who do you use for insurance? You know what I mean? And I used to do this all the time because when I'd buy properties, the first 2 properties I bought were from larger landlords now that were going from small properties to large. And I asked my dad, I'm like, I need to, find somebody. He's like, oh, call up, this person over here, right? The person that you bought the property from. I can call them, right? I can text them right now, and they'll text me back 15 years later and tell me who I should use for insurance or HVAC, or I need some potholes fixed or something, whatever it might be, right? You know what I mean? They're going to be the ones that will reach out because it's all relationships. Maybe I want to sell my property back to them at some time. You know what I mean? So,
right. Look, you got my interest, okay? So I'm thinking to myself right now, and I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to ask you, let's put it this way. Charles, you've obviously been in the game for well over 20 years. You've made mistakes, a lot of victories. You own a lot of units. You know what the heck you're doing. I want you to coach me. I want to get the ball rolling, okay? I want to do this. How fast can you get me to own my first investment property? Realistically speaking, I want to know, from when I began, what is the timeline before I could actually own my first multi-unit?
I would say, depending on the amount of time you're going to put in, I would say
I can put in 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week.
Yeah, I would say 3 to 6 months. That would be an honest.
So 6 months down the road, I own my first one. When will I be ready for the next one?
Well, it depends on kind of what your plan is on the first one, because if you do a little work to it, you refinance it out, maybe you'll get some cash out, but that's gonna be a longer term, 6 months afterwards. It depends on how much money you can put aside for it, and depends on what kind of properties we're buying too. So the first one, you might do it with an FHA. That's gonna be relatively easy to put together the money, right? $300,000 place, you got to put $10,000 together plus some closing costs. It's not really that out of many people's reach. But when you start saying next one, and now I've got to put $60,000 together, or I have to find a seller that will work with me and hold some paper, that's when you can say, okay, now I can get in. Not that I'm going to get in for 3.5%. Maybe I get in for 5% or 10% down. There's so many different ways to cut it, because you might find a property and go, oh, this is great. Like, this is a block from where my property is. I have right now this 3-family. This is a great little 8-unit. It has some deferred maintenance. Okay, then go to the guy and tell him, hey, I'll do 10 or 15% down. And then you say, hey, I need $20,000 in work. How about I take this $20,000 of work off the down payment, and I'll write in the contract that I will take care of all these hot water units and this roof issue and everything within 90 days. So now he has more equity in the property, right? He has a better asset that he's holding paper on. And then you now are in, and you've wrapped in a down payment with renovations to the property. So these are all different ways that you can really get into property. It's just thinking outside the box. Yeah. And it's not something typical that most real estate agents have, because obviously no one's taught it, right? It just takes it kind of, you got to be put on like a little bit of the wheeler and dealer kind of mindset going.
Yeah, man. Okay. So I'm just like, you got my mind spinning, because this is a wealth of knowledge, and obviously you got a wealth of knowledge, and obviously there's going to be a learning curve. And I'm thinking to myself right now, if I wanted to create a passive income, of, let's say $5,000 a month, mm-hmm. Can I have that within 1 year?
It depends on how much money you're starting with. So you got to look at how much you're going to make per unit. If you're making, let's say you have 5,000, I'm
willing to hustle and bustle, okay. Man. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find, the people that are going to let me in for 5%, and they're going to hold no, because then I can do more deals like that. So I'm talking about the person that has the mentality of like, I'm willing to do the work, mm-hmm. to go out there and find those people. How fast will it take me to own enough property to make $5,000 passive every single month?
I would say in most areas, you're probably looking at making about $200 a unit per month, right? With normal financing, normal terms, obviously different markets. But so that's what 25 units. So really what you're doing is you're going out, you're talking to all these owners trying to buy 25 units. That's probably what your end goal is and what you're talking about. You know what I mean?
That probably take, I'm assuming 18 months to 24 months.
Yeah, it depends. Who knows? You might buy a 3-unit, then you might find someone at your local RIA that's got 25 units to sell. You know what I mean? It's there's mom and pops everywhere that you drive around, and they haven't raised rent in years, and they're just sitting back collecting money, and they haven't had debt on it in 10 years. And, it's all this stuff. People live all this stuff all the time. When the rent moratoriums were going on, they were saying that's like half the landlords out there are just mom and pops that own 1 or 2 properties.
So you can show me how to do all of this.
Yeah, what our firm really does is what we do is we focus on working with passive investors to invest into multifamily properties. So if you don't even want to deal with this, and you can invest alongside us in our deals. And that's one way of going about it, which we haven't got into. We're talking more on the active side. What I do is that if someone's listening, they can reach out. I do free 30-minute calls. If I've done some coaching before. I don't have a formal program for it, but if you're very motivated, you'd like to work with me, we can do that as well. But mainly what it is like we're really looking for multifamily, self-storage, mobile home assets, mobile home park assets, and we're going to put our money alongside our investors' money, and it'll be a quarterly distribution. Is kind of how we do it. And so that's an easy way when that's completely passive compared to what we're talking about.
All right, now you got my attention. Now you got my attention all over again. I didn't know you had all that stuff in. So basically I can say, all right, Charles, I'm going to hook you up. I don't know. I'm just throwing a number out there. I'm going to hook you up with $50,000. And then you make that money work for me, and you cut me out a check every quarter?
Yeah, so how it works is really what we're looking at for most deals is we're looking at a 7 to 9% cash on cash. So what that means is that if it was 8% cash on cash and you put in, that'd be a 2% return per quarter. So that's, you're talking on $50,000. What is that? $1,000 per quarter coming in completely residual. And that's done quarterly. ACH it, we just direct deposit right into your account. And other some deals were like our last deal, we didn't pay distributions until month 6 because it was a little bit more of we need a little bit more renovation, getting it situated before we could pay out. You don't want to, because you have to make sure you're paying out real returns. We're not paying out money we raised. And so that's the easiest way and most passive way of doing it. And but there's other ways. Some people want to be a little bit more active. I personally am passive and active. I invest into different asset classes within real estate that I don't know about. We're invested into like farmland and stuff like that. I know nothing about that. Passively, it's fine. It's right. It's another asset to invest into, but it's not something that I'm a professional or expert in. Right. So it's something that you can be active and passive. You don't have to go just one way or the other. And in that way, what our real goal is when you're investing like that is that we can refinance the property in 3 to 5 years or sell it in 3 to 5 years. And returns are crazy now for the last 2 years because of everything that's going. And that has to do with the market, not just because, operators like us are geniuses. It's just kind of everything that's going. So it's important, if you're interested in investing with us or with a different company, make sure that you take that in consideration. And it's very true what they say, past performance doesn't, predict or indicate future returns. And that's very important with anybody.
100%, yeah.
But just make sure you're investing into solid assets. So the main thing here when you're investing into any of these kind of assets, it's you want to have a reserve. Make sure they have a sizable reserve when they're going into it, so they don't call you for money, what we call like a capital call. You don't want that happening. And make sure they're getting long-term debt. So long-term fixed debt, right? You don't want some, if you have a very trained operator, they might get into some variable debt or something like this, which we would stay away from. But if they're saying, hey, we're going to keep this for 3 to 5 years, make sure they have 10-year fixed debt on it, right? So anything that happens in the next 10 years, you don't have to go back to the bank and try to refinance. You don't want to find yourself trying to refinance in March of 2020 in COVID, right? Where banks kind of seized up and then they opened up again, but you had no idea how long that was going to last. So that's when you get into trouble. And so long-term debt, and make sure you have reserves. And then something where you want to be investing into something where maybe when you pull it up onto rent comparables, right? You're buying a property, let's say has $900 a month current rents, and you look to comparables around the area and you see 1,000 or 1,100. You go, okay, there is growth. So we can do some work to this property and we can actually raise rents. Because when we raise rents, this is the big difference between commercial and residential, is we don't work off MLS. They'll put it into the broker package when we're dealing with these larger guys at Cushman and CBRE, but it really comes down to the NOI is how you price it with the cap rate for the area. And so as you can add in an extra $5 a month on every unit, that's all profit. That's when you're really seeing your value go up, which means we can get money out in the refinance.
I love it. I love it. So Charles, there's somebody that's either watching this video and or listening to the podcast, and they're saying to themselves, I gotta talk to this guy. How can they reach you? How can they get on a call with you, schedule a call with you, etc.? How can people connect with you?
Yeah, so the easiest way is just going to schedulecharles.com. It goes to a page directly on my website where you can set up a 30-minute call with me, and we'll talk about anything. If you're interested in passive investing, if you want to active invest, if you want to do both, if you don't know what you want to do, I'll talk to you about anything. It doesn't matter, and I'll point you in the right direction, hopefully, of where you can go and start your real estate investing career and start making some long-term wealth.
Awesome. So this is just an opening of a relationship, and there's absolutely no obligation.
No. And if you want, we'll add you onto our deal list, and you'll get a deal email from us every 2 to 4 months. If you don't want to, you don't want the deal, you delete it. If you're interested about it, you can click and talk to myself or one of my partners, and we can talk about the deal. But that's really kind of it. And you have an idea of what we're working on. And if you have questions with your investing career as well, that's something that we can answer or talk about as well in the first call. And depending on where you want to go, hopefully I can point you in the right direction to the person or the source. And I think that's the best for everyone.
Awesome. So schedulecharles.com. How simple can it get? schedulecharles.com. I love it. Awesome, brother. Well, hey, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate your knowledge. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and making the time to speak to our audience today. I know there's somebody out there that's been thinking about, how can I invest a little bit of my money? I know I've been selling real estate. I want to invest in real estate. Where do I begin? How do I begin? All that stuff. You've done a great job in answering those questions and pointing people in the right direction. And for those of you guys that are ready to, step up and take this to the next level, simply go to schedulecharles.com, book a time to speak to Charles. He already said there's no obligation. It's just an introduction to build a relationship that hopefully becomes profitable for everybody in that relationship. Charles, thank you very much for being on the Top Listing Agent Show. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome.